The Galactic Coalition's most advanced bomb disposal unit stood frozen in the cargo bay of the merchant vessel Prosperity's Edge. 3 species, each representing millions of years of evolution and technological advancement, stared at the device before them with expressions that could only be described as pure terror. Commander Zethkar, a Vortani whose crystalline exoskeleton typically shimmered with confidence, now flickered a sickly yellow. His forearms trembled as he consulted his scanner for the 15th time in 2 minutes. "The quantum resonance patterns are completely unstable," he whispered, his translator struggling with the fear-distorted harmonics of his native language. "One wrong move and this thing will take out half the sector." Next to him, Dr. Yilamesh coiled her serpentine body tighter, her scales rippling with anxiety. The Naga scientist had diffused over 300 explosive devices in her career, but nothing like this. "The fusion core is linked to 17 different trigger mechanisms," she hissed, her forked tongue tasting the ozone-heavy air. "Each one calibrated to detonate if tampered with. It's like they wanted it to be impossible to disarm." The third member of their team, Engineer Corvin, clicked his mandibles in rapid succession. The insectoid hive mind's compound eyes reflected the device's ominous red glow as he processed thousands of calculations per second. "I Collective has run 847,623 simulations," he chittered. "Success probability remains at 0.01%. The margin for error is beyond microscopic." The device itself was a masterwork of malevolent engineering. Roughly the size of a cargo container, it hummed with barely contained energy. Wires snaked across its surface like veins, connecting nodes that pulsed with deadly light. At its center, a timer counted down with mechanical precision. 000947. For 946. Kona 945. Who builds something like this? Zethkar wondered aloud, his translator finally catching up to his rapid speech patterns. "The hegemony doesn't even use weapons this sophisticated. This level of engineering. It's beyond anything we've seen." Dr. Yilamesh slithered closer to examine the device's base, careful not to disturb any of the sensor arrays surrounding it. "The construction is flawless," she admitted reluctantly. "Multiple redundancies, fail-safes for the fail-safes, and backup systems that activate if you even look at them wrong. Whoever made this understood that someone would try to stop it." The cargo bay fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of the countdown. Each member of the bomb squad was lost in their own calculations, running through scenarios in their minds, searching for some angle they hadn't considered. But every path led to the same conclusion. This was a one-way trip. "We should evacuate," Corvin finally stated, his collective consciousness reaching consensus. "Alert the fleet, get everyone to minimum safe distance. At least we can minimize casualties." "Minimum safe distance for a device this size would be 3 light minutes," Dr. Yilamesh pointed out, her tail lashing in frustration. "There are 14 colonies within that radius. 2 billion civilians who can't be moved in time." Zethkar's crystalline form dimmed as the reality of their situation settled in. The shipment manifests were fake. This wasn't medical supplies being transported to the outer rim. Someone wanted this bomb exactly where it is, when it is. The timer continued its relentless countdown. 000917, 300916, 0915. "There has to be something," Dr. Yilamesh insisted, though her voice carried little conviction. "Some weakness we haven't found. No one builds a perfect weapon." "Perhaps not," Corvin agreed, "but they built one that's perfect enough. My collective's analysis shows that the human homeworld would be within the blast radius if this detonates. They've essentially created a checkmate scenario." The mention of Earth sent a chill through all 3 team members. The humans were the Coalition's newest members, their planet a vibrant blue jewel that had only recently joined the galactic community. Their representatives spoke passionately about exploration, discovery, and the endless potential of cooperation between species. They were optimistic to the point of being naive, but their enthusiasm had been infectious. 8 minutes, 37 seconds, Zethkar announced unnecessarily. They could all see the display, could all hear the soft beep that marked each passing second. "Should we contact Coalition Command?" "Let them know." "Know what?" Dr. Yilamesh snapped. "That the 3 most experienced bomb disposal experts in known space are about to fail spectacularly? That we're going to let billions die because we couldn't figure out some maniac's puzzle?" Corvin's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. Instead of trying to disarm it, what if we could relocate it? Use a transport beam to move it somewhere safe? The quantum shielding would prevent any transport lock, Zethkar explained. And even if we could get through it, the device would register the transport field as an attack and detonate immediately. The three experts stood in defeated silence, watching the timer count down their failure. Each had devoted their lives to saving others, to being the steady hands that worked in the shadow of death to preserve life. But this time, death had outmaneuvered them completely. 8:42. 08:41. 008:40. It was then that the cargo bay doors hissed open, and the most unlikely savior in the galaxy walked in whistling an old Earth tune. The human engineer looked completely out of place among the sophisticated aliens, wearing a simple jumpsuit and carrying what appeared to be a toolbox that had seen better decades. "Heard you folks might need some help with a technical problem," the human said cheerfully, apparently oblivious to the fact that he'd just walked into ground zero of a galactic catastrophe. Marcus Chen looked remarkably calm for someone who had just entered a room containing enough explosive power to sterilize a solar system. The human engineer set his battered toolbox down with a metallic clunk and approached the device as if he were examining a malfunctioning air conditioning unit. "You need to leave," Commander Zethkar said urgently, his crystalline form flashing urgent orange warnings. "This area is under immediate evacuation order. The device is set to detonate in less than 8 minutes. Marcus nodded thoughtfully, pulling out what appeared to be an ancient tablet computer and a pair of wire-rimmed glasses. "Yeah, I saw the evacuation notice. Figured you might want someone to take a look before everyone gives up and runs away." He squinted at the device through his glasses. "Mind if I ask what you've tried so far?" Dr. Yilamesh's scales rippled with disbelief. "What we've tried? Human, this is not some mechanical puzzle. This is a weapon of mass destruction with quantum-level security systems and enough redundant failsafes to make it really hard to turn off." "Yeah, I get it," Marcus interrupted gently, already walking a slow circle around the bomb. "But somebody built it, which means somebody can unbuild it. That's just engineering." He paused at one corner, tapping something into his tablet. "These power coupling over here look familiar. Hegemony design, but modified." Engineer Corvin's compound eyes tracked the human's movement with fascination and horror. "My collective has analyzed every component visible on the device's surface. The integration patterns are beyond current coalition understanding." "How can you possibly identify the origin so quickly?" Marcus chuckled, a sound that seemed impossibly out of place in the tense atmosphere. "Well, I helped design some of these components about 5 years ago, back when the hegemony was still pretending to be interested in peace talks." He made another note on his tablet. "They ordered about 50,000 of these power regulators through some shell companies. Said they were for mining operations. You designed parts of this weapon?" Zethkar's voice rose an octave, his translator struggling with the emotional stress. "Parts of the power system, yeah. Though I have to say, whoever put this together did some creative modifications. See this?" Marcus pointed to a cluster of crystalline components that pulsed with soft light. "These are Vortani quantum processors, but they've been rewired to control multiple systems simultaneously. Normally, they can only handle one primary function." Dr. Yilamesh slithered closer despite herself, professional curiosity overriding her survival instincts. "The quantum processors are the primary control hub. We identified them as the most critical component, but every approach we simulate results in cascade failure. That's because you're thinking about it like a normal device," Marcus explained, now kneeling beside the bomb and examining it more closely. "Normal devices are built to work efficiently. This thing? It's built to work maliciously. Every system is designed to punish you for trying to turn it off." 7P3. 00722. 0721. "Then how do you propose to disarm it?" Corvin asked, his collective consciousness running probability analyses on the human's behavioral patterns. "If conventional approaches are insufficient..." Marcus sat back on his heels and looked up at the three experts. "Who says I'm going to disarm it?" The silence that followed was deafening. Even the bomb's humming seemed to pause, as if the device itself was surprised by the statement. "Human," Dr. Yilamesh said very carefully, "if you do not disarm the device, it will detonate. The consequences of that detonation will be catastrophic." "Yeah, I heard the briefing on the way in." Marcus stood up and dusted off his knees. "But disarming it isn't the only way to stop it from killing people." He walked over to his toolbox and began pulling out what looked like spare parts and electronic components. Most of them appeared to be standard repair kit items, the kind of basic tools any engineer might carry. But as he laid them out systematically, a pattern began to emerge. See, whoever built this thing made one critical assumption, Marcus continued, now connecting wires between various components with practiced ease. They assumed that anyone trying to stop it would play by the rules. Try to disarm it safely, try to preserve the technology for study, try to minimize collateral damage to the immediate area. Zethkar watched the human work with growing fascination. But you do not intend to play by these rules. Nope. Marcus grinned, a distinctly human expression that somehow conveyed both humor and determination. I intend to cheat. The device he was assembling looked like a cross between a radio transmitter and a small explosive charge. Nothing sophisticated, nothing that would look out of place in a basic electronics workshop. But as he worked, the three coalition experts began to understand what he was planning. A localized electromagnetic pulse, Dr. Yilamesh breathed. You're going to fry the electronics. Not exactly, Marcus corrected, making a final connection. An EMP would just trigger the failsafes and set the thing off faster. What I'm building is more like a translator. Korvan's mandibles clicked rapidly. Translator. Every system on this bomb is talking to every other system, right? Checking to make sure nobody's tampering with it. Confirming that all components are functioning normally. It's like a really paranoid conversation where everyone's constantly asking, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" Marcus held up his improvised device. This little guy is going to join that conversation. And it's going to lie. Sono 618, Otiot 6 and 7, Shorsegair. You cannot possibly have built a device capable of deceiving quantum-encrypted security protocols, Zethkar protested. The computational requirements alone. I'm not trying to break the encryption, Marcus explained patiently. I'm just going to tell each system that all the other systems are happy. They'll keep checking on each other, but my device will intercept those check-ins and send back everything's fine messages. Dr. Yilamesh stared at the simple collection of components. That should not work. Probably won't, Marcus agreed cheerfully. But that's okay because I've got a backup plan. He reached into his toolbox and pulled out what appeared to be a sandwich and a thermos of coffee. The three coalition experts watched in stunned silence as Marcus unwrapped his sandwich with the same methodical care he had shown while building his improvised device. The timer continued its relentless countdown, now showing less than 6 minutes until detonation, and the human was preparing to have lunch. Are you experiencing some form of psychological breakdown? Dr. Yilamesh asked with what might have been concern. The stress of impending death can cause various species to exhibit unusual behaviors. Marcus took a bite of what appeared to be peanut butter and jelly on white bread, chewing thoughtfully. Nah, I'm good. Just thinking through the problem. He gestured at the bomb with his sandwich. See, the thing about really complicated traps is that they usually have really complicated solutions. But complicated solutions are fragile. They depend on everything working exactly right. Commander Zethkar's crystalline form flickered between colors as he processed the human's casual attitude. And your solution is simple? Stupidly simple, Marcus confirmed, taking another bite. Want to know what the real problem is with this bomb? It's too smart. Engineer Korvan clicked his mandibles in confusion. Intelligence in a weapon system is typically considered an advantage. Only if you're fighting other smart things, Marcus replied. But what happens when you point a really smart weapon at a really dumb problem? He finished his sandwich and stood up, wiping his hands on a napkin with the same casual precision he had shown with his tools. The three aliens watched as he approached his improvised device and began making final adjustments. Every security system on this bomb is designed to detect and counter intelligent attacks, Marcus continued. Sophisticated hacking attempts, careful disarmament procedures, complex bypass mechanisms. It's like having a chess grandmaster guarding a door. 0544. 0543. 0542. But what if you don't play chess? Dr. Yilamesh asked, beginning to understand where the human's logic was leading. Exactly. Marcus grinned and picked up his device. What if you just kick the door down? He attached the device to the bomb's outer casing with what appeared to be industrial tape. The sophisticated alien technology was now connected to a collection of spare parts held together with adhesive that looked like it came from a hardware store. "This is your plan?" Zethkar's voice rose in pitch. "Attach a primitive device to the most sophisticated weapon ever created?" "Pretty much." Marcus checked his tablet, which was displaying what looked like basic radio frequencies. "The bomb systems are so advanced that they've never encountered anything this simple. My little translator box doesn't have the processing power to break their encryption or override their protocols. It can't even understand what they're saying most of the time." The device began to emit a soft humming sound, and several lights on the bomb flickered in response. "But it doesn't need to understand," Marcus continued. "It just needs to be loud and obnoxious. Think of it as the electronic equivalent of a drunk person at a party who keeps interrupting serious conversations with random comments." Korvan's compound eyes widened as sensor readings began, fluctuating across his instruments. "The quantum resonance patterns are destabilizing. The device's internal communications are becoming increasingly erratic. The security systems are trying to identify the source of interference," Dr. Yilamesh observed, her professional training overriding her disbelief. "But they cannot classify the signal. It does not match any known attack pattern." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Right. And while they're trying to figure out what my little box is doing, they're not paying attention to each other. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, so to speak." The bomb's humming grew louder, and the lights across its surface began flashing in increasingly chaotic patterns. Warning signals began displaying on the alien's instruments, but Marcus seemed unconcerned. He was watching his tablet with the focused attention of someone playing a video game. 451. 0 to 0 core 50. 0 to 449. "What is your secondary plan?" Zethkar asked nervously, watching the device's growing instability. "Well, if this doesn't work, I figure we've got about 4.5 minutes to come up with something else," Marcus replied cheerfully. "But I'm pretty optimistic. Look at those readings." He pointed to his tablet, which was showing a series of simple waveforms that meant nothing to the alien experts, but Marcus was interpreting them like a conductor reading sheet music. "The bomb's internal systems are arguing with each other now. Security Protocol A thinks there's an attack from the left. Protocol B thinks there's an attack from the right. And Protocol C thinks both A and B have been compromised. They're spending so much processing power trying to identify threats that they're not actually checking to see if anyone's tampering with the bomb." Dr. Yilamesh slithered closer to examine the readings on her own instruments. "The quantum processors are operating at 340% of normal capacity. They are burning through their power reserves attempting to analyze your device." "Yep. And here's the beautiful part," Marcus said, making a small adjustment to his improvised translator. "They can't turn off the analysis protocols without potentially compromising security. But they also can't identify what they're analyzing because it's not sophisticated enough to have a recognizable signature." The bomb's timer continued counting down. But something strange was happening. The display flickered occasionally, sometimes showing numbers that didn't quite match the expected progression. Once, for almost a full second, it displayed what appeared to be random symbols. "The chronometer is experiencing temporal displacement errors," Korvan reported, his collective consciousness struggling to process the paradox. "The internal timing mechanisms are no longer synchronized." Marcus grinned and opened his thermos, pouring himself a cup of coffee as if he were on a coffee break rather than standing next to a weapon of mass destruction. "Turns out that when you overload quantum processors with meaningless data, they start making mistakes. Small ones at first, but mistakes nonetheless." 4 on 17. 0 16. 3 59. The three experts stared as the timer jumped backward, then forward, then displayed what looked like alien hieroglyphs for several seconds before returning to numbers. "It's losing track of time," Zethkar whispered, his crystalline form shimmering with amazement. "Among other things," Marcus confirmed, taking a sip of his coffee. "Give it another minute or two and it won't be able to remember what it's supposed to be counting down to." The bomb's display continued its erratic dance between numbers, symbols, and what appeared to be fragments of code. The sophisticated weapon that had terrified the Coalition's best experts was now behaving like a confused computer, trying to remember what it was supposed to be. Marcus finished his coffee and set the thermos aside, watching his tablet with the satisfaction of someone whose experimental recipe was turning out exactly as planned. The three alien experts remained frozen in fascination and horror as their instruments registered increasingly bizarre readings from the device. The fusion core containment is fluctuating, Dr. Yilamesh reported, her voice tight with professional concern. Power distribution is becoming erratic across all systems. Is that dangerous? Commander Zethkar asked, though given their situation, the question seemed almost redundant. Under normal circumstances, yes, Marcus replied, making another small adjustment to his improvised device. But these aren't normal circumstances. The bomb safety systems are designed to prevent accidental detonation during transport, or if something goes wrong with the timer. Right now, those systems are getting mixed signals about what wrong actually means. The display flickered again. Euro 322, Turkican 67, error 000291. System diagnostic in progress. It is attempting to run a system diagnostic, Engineer Korvan observed, his mandibles clicking rapidly. But the diagnostic protocols are also being affected by your interference device. Exactly, Marcus nodded. The diagnostic is trying to figure out what's wrong, but it's using the same corrupted data that caused the problem in the first place. It's like asking someone with amnesia to help you remember something. The bomb's humming had changed pitch, becoming more irregular and somehow less threatening. Several of the status lights that had been pulsing red were now blinking amber, or had gone dark entirely. The weapon that had seemed so menacingly purposeful now appeared confused and uncertain. 2 Frio. Diagnostic failure. 0833. Recalibrating. The chronometer has lost all temporal reference points, Dr. Yilamesh said, staring at her instruments in disbelief. It no longer knows what time it started counting down from. Marcus grinned and pulled out what appeared to be a smartphone, an ancient piece of human technology that looked primitive compared to the advanced devices the aliens carried. That's where this comes in. He connected the phone to his improvised device with a cable that looked like it had been cannibalized from various electronic components. The phone's screen lit up with what appeared to be a simple app displaying a digital clock. You're going to synchronize it with your primitive chronometer? Zethkar asked, his crystalline form flickering with confusion. Not exactly, Marcus replied, tapping the phone's screen. I'm going to teach it a new way to tell time. The phone began broadcasting a simple time signal, the kind that had been used on Earth for decades to synchronize clocks across networks. It was primitive, unencrypted, and utterly basic compared to the quantum-encrypted temporal protocols the bomb had been designed to use. But the bomb, in its confused state, was desperate for any reliable time reference. Its sophisticated systems, overloaded and contradicting each other, began to latch onto the simple signal from Marcus's phone like a drowning person grabbing a life preserver. 12 ICO, Surdo 1159, Drawers 1158. It's accepting the new time reference, Korvan reported, his collective consciousness struggling to process the implications. The chronometer is now synchronized to your device, which is currently set to 12 minutes, Marcus explained cheerfully. But here's the fun part. He tapped his phone again and the display changed. Instead of counting down, it began counting up. 0N1, Therso there, Fergoro 3. You've convinced it that it's counting up instead of down? Dr. Yilamesh asked, her serpentine form coiled tight with tension. Better than that, Marcus said, making one final adjustment to his setup. I've convinced it that it's been counting up this whole time. As far as the bomb's confused little brain is concerned, it started at 0 and has been waiting for some external signal to tell it when to explode. The alien experts stared at the display as it continued counting upward, each passing second taking them further from danger rather than closer to it. The bomb's other systems, still overloaded by Marcus's interference device, accepted the temporal reset without question. But what prevents it from detonating when it reaches the original target time? Zethkar asked. Marcus held up his phone. This little guy is now the bomb's external timing reference, and I've programmed it to never ever send a detonation signal. He paused, considering. Well, technically it will send one, but not for about 97 years. I figured that should be long enough for someone to properly disarm the thing. 347. Farso 349. The tension in the cargo bay began to ease as the implications sank in. The weapon of mass destruction that had threatened billions of lives was now peacefully counting upward, waiting for a signal that would never come. The power core is stabilizing, Dr. Yilamesh reported, her scales rippling with relief. All critical systems are reading normal parameters. Fusion containment is secure, Corvin added. The device appears to be in a stable standby configuration. Marcus began packing up his tools, whistling the same tune he had been humming when he entered. Should be safe to move now once you disconnect my little translator box. Just don't mess with the phone until you can get proper disposal experts in here. Commander Zethkar approached the human engineer, his crystalline form shimmering with what appeared to be awe. How did you know this would work? The probability calculations suggested that any interference with the device would result in immediate detonation. Marcus shrugged, sealing his toolbox with practiced efficiency. Sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem is to convince it that it's not actually a problem. The bomb was designed to be too smart to disarm, so I made it too confused to explode. He paused at the cargo bay doors and looked back at the three experts who were still staring at the peacefully counting device. Besides, he added with a grin, humans have been dealing with overcomplicated technology our whole lives. We've gotten pretty good at turning it off and on again when it stops working right. 3 hours later, Marcus sat in the coalition ship's mess hall, enjoying what the food synthesizer had assured him was a close approximation of Earth-style pizza. The three experts who had witnessed his unconventional bomb disposal technique sat across from him, still processing what had happened. Word had spread quickly through the coalition fleet. The bomb had been safely transported to a specialized containment facility, where teams of engineers were already studying Marcus's improvised solution. The device continued counting upward peacefully, now approaching the 6-hour mark with no signs of instability. I have consulted with my collective, Engineer Corvin announced, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. We have analyzed your methodology 2,047 times. The success probability should have been 0. Marcus took another bite of synthetic pizza and shrugged. Probability assumes you know all the variables. But when you're dealing with something that's never been tried before, probability becomes more like educated guessing. Dr. Yilamesh coiled herself more comfortably in her chair, her scales still rippling occasionally with residual amazement. The hegemony engineers who constructed that device are considered the finest weapons specialists in known space. How is it possible that they overlooked such a vulnerability? They didn't overlook it, Marcus replied, washing down the pizza with what the synthesizer claimed was cola, but tasted more like carbonated fruit juice. They assumed nobody would be stupid enough to try it. Commander Zethkar's crystalline form flickered between colors as he processed this statement. You are suggesting that intelligence was a disadvantage in this situation? Not intelligence exactly, Marcus clarified. More like overthinking. See, when really smart people build really complicated things, they tend to assume that other really smart people will try to defeat them using really complicated methods. He gestured around the mess hall, where various coalition species were going about their normal routines, unaware of how close they had come to catastrophe. But humans, we've got a long history of solving complex problems with simple solutions. Sometimes the best way to deal with a sophisticated lock is to go through the wall next to it. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Kesatara, the Coalition's senior command officer for the sector. The Aquarian's fluid form rippled with barely contained curiosity as she approached their table. Engineer Chen, she said, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of her species. I've just finished reviewing the technical reports from the disposal team. They're calling your solution elegantly primitive. Marcus chuckled. I've been called worse. The Coalition Council has asked me to extend their formal gratitude, the Admiral continued. Your actions prevented what could have been the greatest disaster in galactic history. 2 billion lives were saved by your intervention. Just doing my job, Marcus replied modestly, though he did seem pleased by the recognition. Admiral Kesatara's form shifted, taking on the posture that indicated serious discussion among her people. Which raises an interesting question. According to our records, you're listed as a civilian contractor, specializing in basic ship maintenance and repair systems. How does someone with your background come to possess such unique problem-solving capabilities? Marcus finished his pizza and leaned back in his chair. Well, I grew up on a farm in Iowa. When the replicator breaks and you've got 100 head of cattle that need feeding, you learn to fix things with whatever's lying around. Can't wait 3 weeks for official replacement parts when there's work to be done. The three bomb disposal experts exchanged glances. They had spent years training in sophisticated techniques and advanced technologies. The idea that agricultural problem-solving could translate to disarming weapons of mass destruction seemed almost absurd. "There's more to it than that," Dr. Yilamesh observed. "Your understanding of the device's construction and weaknesses was remarkably precise." "Like I said, I helped design some of the components," Marcus reminded them. "But more than that, I've spent 20 years working on coalition vessels, fixing systems that were designed by a dozen different species with completely different engineering philosophies." He gestured at the mess hall's food synthesizer, which was currently producing what appeared to be a glowing purple beverage for a Zephyrian crew member. "You want to know what teaches you creative problem-solving? Try keeping a ship running when the Vortani power systems don't talk to the Naga navigation computers. And both of them hate the hive mind environmental controls." Admiral Kesatara rippled with what Marcus had learned to recognize as laughter. "I see your point. Necessity breeds innovation." "Exactly. And humans have been making do with mismatched systems our whole history," Marcus continued. "We're really good at finding ways to make incompatible things work together. Even if the solution isn't pretty." The mess hall's communication system chimed, and Admiral Kestara's attention shifted to the incoming message. Her form darkened as she absorbed the information. "What is it?" Commander Zethkar asked, his crystalline surface flickering with concern. "Intelligence reports," the Admiral replied grimly. "The bomb you disarmed was not an isolated incident. Our sources suggest the hegemony has deployed similar devices throughout Coalition space, possibly dozens of them." The table fell silent as the implications sank in. One bomb had nearly destroyed billions of lives. Multiple bombs could cripple the entire Coalition. "Do we know their locations?" Dr. Yilamesh asked. "Some of them, but our disposal teams are already stretched thin, and none of them have successfully disarmed a hegemony quantum bomb before today." Admiral Kesatara's attention turned to Marcus. "Which brings me to my real reason for coming here." Marcus set down his synthetic cola and met the Admiral's gaze. "You want me to help with the other bombs?" "The Coalition Council is prepared to offer you a formal commission," the Admiral said. "Full authority to organize and train specialized response teams. Your methods, unconventional as they are, represent our best hope for dealing with this threat." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, looking around the mess hall at the diverse collection of beings who had become his colleagues and friends over the years. Finally, he smiled. "I'll need a bigger toolbox." 6 months later, Marcus stood in the Coalition's newly established Unconventional Threat Response Center, watching his team prepare for their 15th bomb disposal mission. The center hummed with activity as beings from across the galaxy worked together, using techniques that would have horrified military engineers a year ago. At Station 1, a young Vortani technician named Veltar was practicing the fine art of creative interference using what appeared to be a modified coffee maker and a collection of spare communications equipment. Her crystalline form glowed with concentration as she worked to jam quantum frequencies using decidedly non-quantum methods. "Remember," Marcus called out to her, "the goal isn't to break their encryption. You just want to give their security system something really annoying to think about while we work." At Station 2, Dr. Yilamesh coiled around a training device, teaching a group of Naga engineers how to identify component origins by their engineering DNA. The serpentine scientist had become one of Marcus's most enthusiastic converts, embracing what she now called archaeological reverse engineering. "Every species has distinctive construction habits," she explained to her students. "Hegemony engineers always over-engineer their fail-safes. Vortani systems prioritize elegance over redundancy. Hive mind technology shows collective decision-making patterns. Once you recognize these signatures, you can predict how systems will behave under stress." Engineer Korvan supervised Station 3, where his collective consciousness had been put to work, developing what Marcus called stupid solutions to smart problems. The insectoid's ability to run thousands of simultaneous calculations had proven invaluable for finding the simplest possible approach to complex challenges. "Today's exercise involves a Type 7 hegemony timer mechanism," Korvan announced to his mixed species team. "My collective has identified 847 potential disarmament procedures. Your task is to find the one that requires no specialized tools and can be completed by someone with basic Technical training. The transformation hadn't been easy. Coalition Command had initially resisted Marcus's unconventional training methods, preferring to rely on established protocols and sophisticated equipment. But as success followed success, resistance had turned to curiosity, then enthusiasm. The breakthrough had come during the third bomb disposal, when Marcus's hastily assembled team had neutralized a device in under 10 minutes, using techniques that violated every principle of conventional ordnance disposal. Word spread quickly through Coalition space. The humans had found a way to make the impossible merely improbable. Admiral Kesitara entered the training center, her fluid form rippling with the satisfaction that came from watching a successful operation. "Status report, Director Chen," she said, using Marcus's new official title. Marcus grinned and gestured around the busy center. 14 successful disposals, 0 casualties, and a waiting list of volunteers from species we've never heard of who want to learn human engineering principles. The Galactic Engineering Institute has formally requested access to your training materials, the Admiral reported. They want to establish a new curriculum based on your methods. They can have the materials, Marcus replied, but they might not like them. Most of our advanced techniques come down to reading instruction manuals, understanding how things are supposed to work, and then finding creative ways to make them not work that way. The Admiral's form shifted into what Marcus recognized as her expression of gentle amusement. The Institute's preliminary review described your approach as revolutionary in its simplicity, which is just a fancy way of saying we're too stubborn to accept that something can't be fixed, Marcus clarified. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from the center's communication system. A holographic display materialized, showing the concerned face of Commander Zethkar, who was currently leading a disposal mission in the Outer Rim. Director Chen, the Vortani's translated voice carried undertones of professional excitement. We've encountered something new. The device here appears to be a fusion of hegemony technology with unknown components. It's not responding to any of our standard approaches. Marcus studied the technical readout streaming across the display. The bomb was indeed different from the others they had encountered, incorporating design elements that didn't match any known engineering traditions. "What's your assessment, Commander?" Marcus asked. "The device appears to be learning from our previous successes," Zethkar replied. "It has countermeasures specifically designed to resist interference-based attacks. Someone has been studying our methods." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Makes sense. We've neutralized 14 of their bombs using essentially the same approach. They were bound to adapt eventually. So what do we do?" Dr. Yilamesh asked, looking up from her training session. "If they found ways to counter our techniques." Marcus smiled, the expression carrying the same confident determination that had characterized his first bomb disposal 6 months earlier. "Then we adapt too. That's what humans do best." He turned to address the entire training center, his voice carrying easily across the busy space. "All right, people, looks like we've got a new challenge. They've built a bomb that's specifically designed to resist our previous methods. Anyone want to take a guess at what that means?" Veltar's crystalline form brightened with understanding. "It means they're still thinking like engineers." "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. "They've built a sophisticated defense against a specific type of attack, which means they've probably made it vulnerable to a completely different type of attack," Corvin finished, his collective consciousness already beginning to explore new possibilities. Admiral Kesitara watched the team mobilize with the smooth efficiency that came from months of working together. Representatives from a dozen species began collaborating on solutions that individually, none of them could have conceived. "What's the plan, Director?" she asked. Marcus was already pulling on his jacket and gathering his tools. "Same as always, Admiral. We're going to show them that the universe is a lot weirder and more creative than any single species can imagine." He paused at the center's exit, looking back at the diverse group of beings who had become the galaxy's most unlikely heroes. "Besides," he added with a grin, "they may have studied our methods, but I don't think they figured out the most important part of human engineering yet." "Which is?" Admiral Kestera inquired. "We never solved the same problem the same way twice." As Marcus headed out to face the 15th hegemony bomb, the Unconventional Threat Response Center continued its work. Across the galaxy, Coalition worlds slept peacefully, protected by the simple truth that sometimes the best way to defeat superior technology was to approach it with inferior methods applied by superior imagination. The hegemony had built the perfect trap. But they had made one critical error in their calculations. They had assumed their enemies would be reasonable. They had never accounted for humans.